I started questioning, well, what is respect for people? Respect for people is more proactive and it's more intentional. It's really about fostering that consistency across all levels of the organization. And it's something that when you're practicing it, it's more meaningful cultural and operational change really across the organization.
Respect for people, it's kind of like this, how do I grab it? How do I wrap my hands around this? The roadmap that you created and the practices that you created, the exercises, not just the information, did an amazing job of actually helping it take shape. When I think about respect for people, now I have specific things that I can think about.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast, led by your hosts, the amazing Shane and myself, Patrick Adams. Shane, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks, Patrick. I'm excited about today's guest. I'm excited about the topic today. I got a question for you, though, to start this.
Okay.
So let's do a quick gut check here. What is a workplace behavior that instantly tells you, you know what, this leader gets it? And what's one that makes you want to fake a Wi-Fi outage?
Ooh, that's a good question. Fake a Wi-Fi outage. Right. Okay. I can't say that I've ever done that before, but I bet there are people out there that have. I would say one behavior that I see that when I know that leaders really get it is when I go to visit their site and instead of bringing me into a conference room, they bring me out on the production floor and we take a walk, right? I think, and you can always tell too when leaders are, I say production floor, but it could be the Gemba, right? The office or whatever their Gemba is. But you can also tell because their team isn't surprised to see them, right? That's an indicator that a leader gets it and they're doing the right stuff.
What's one that would make you fake a Wi-Fi outage? It's kind of like how we used to have. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I'm in no cell service now. Sorry.
Yeah. I would say, man, I can think of a few leaders actually. I won't name any names, but arrogance, I'm too good for that. That's you can pick that up pretty easy. Normally they manage by fear and, when they're out on the Gemba, it's like people are a little worried, like, what are we in trouble for, kind of thing. Complete opposite of the first leader that I mentioned. Right. So that would be for me.
When I think about it, it's a leader that's willing to celebrate their people. When you're going in, see them, and the first thing they do instead of take you to the conference room is take you out to where their people are, and they celebrate. This is what they have done. Look at this.
Yes.
And then the want to fake the Wi-Fi outage kind of a thing. I think about after the leader steps out and I'm with the frontline workers, their reaction to how the leader steps out, because sometimes leaders will come in and they're very charismatic and they're this is all about blah blah blah, and they're really building it up, and then when you leave you can see the collective eye roll, and they're like, people are like, yeah, he talks or she talks a good game, but
yes, I agree completely. So we're going to dive into this a little bit deeper with our guest.
Very excited.
So stay tuned, everybody. But Shane, do you want to do a quick intro? We'll bring our guest to the stage and let's dive into this. I'm excited to talk about.
You're right. All right. Okay. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we have Scott Gauvin, who is a management consultant and lean specialist with 30 years of experience helping organizations transform the way they perceive and pursue performance. As the CEO of Macresco and co-founder of the Respect for People roadmap, he's partnered with organizations worldwide and across industries to innovate their businesses and operating models and put people at the center of their corporate and operational strategies. Scott, we are so glad you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, I'm excited for you to be on the show. I'm actually now I'm interested because Shane mentioned the company name. Obviously, I'm excited to hear about Respect for People roadmap, but I'm also a little bit interested in the name Macresco. Can you give us a little bit of background on that? Where did that name come from?
Yeah, so 30 years ago, when I decided to kind of hang my own shingle and go off and start doing consulting, I knew it was going to be centered around kind of the lean practices. So I was trying to find something that connected, at least a name of a company that connected. And I was playing around and found that the Latin word for to become lean is Macresco. And I said,
Really?
that's it right there.
I don't even know where I would look. What's Latin for lean? Like, where is that? I mean, it rhymes with Nebraska, all kinds of rhyming things, but I wouldn't have necessarily gone to, what's the Latin word for this?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that so many people are going to have a trouble saying the name, but it creates a conversation point. So
I want to say Nabisco or Mabisco or just anything, but Macresco.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it.
Cool.
The other thing that I think is important to mention before we dive into some questions around Respect for People is the fact that you just published a book, right? The name of the book is Leading with Compassion: Cultivating Connection from the Inside Out. And we will drop a link to this book into the show notes. So if anyone's interested, it did just come out. And actually, when we're recording this, it's getting ready to publish. So by the time you all are listening to this, it will be out there on Amazon. Tell us a little bit about this, because it's really interesting, the fact that you wrote this actually with a group. And I'd like our audience to hear a little bit more about that, because the topic of leading with compassion is something we're going to talk about, I think, extensively as we dive into Respect for People. Right. So can you just give us just a little bit of the background on the book?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of the backstory. So when I was developing the Respect for People roadmap, one of the things that we kept coming back to was that we wanted people to engage with compassion. And I said, well, I really should understand what that means. And so I participated in a program for about a year to learn about the elements of compassion, what it is, how it shows up in the workplace, and then got connected with a whole pile of people who are trying to do the same things, really bringing compassion to the workplace, really trying to change the work environments of organizations. And so about 25 of us have now come together to write our stories around how each of us came to leading with compassion. What was that moment, or what was that example in our careers or in our lives that kind of the light bulb went off, and we realized, oh, okay, there's a different path forward, and if I pursue this path, a whole bunch of good things can happen. And so we came together, and we all wrote a chapter in this book.
How did you even find this program? And I've never even heard of this until I heard you start talking about this book.
Well, it's a program out of Stanford that they had run for many years, and it was really around, I think, their effort to create more compassionate leaders, and so a lot of it was in the healthcare space, and so this was during the COVID years, and so it was a completely virtual thing. And I think my cohort of people, the year that I did it, there were 200 people that participated in this program. My cohort was 100 people. So so there's a fairly large community of people out there who are kind of centered around this idea of leading with compassion. And we're all kind of making our little niche, our little mark, kind of in the workplace. So.
That's a great feel-good story right now. I need more of these kind of stories, Scott. Thanks. That's great.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So, Scott, I'm interested also to hear a little bit more about the Respect for People roadmap. We're going to be talking about this a little bit deeper and kind of picking apart and diving into some more details here. But tell us about the Respect for People roadmap. What is that exactly, and how can people use it to, for their own lean journey?
Yeah. So what happened is, I started kind of down the lean path, and like most of us, we get enamored by the continuous improvement tools, and no different for myself. At some point during that journey, I started to realize that it's about behavior, not just process. And so that sent me off kind of looking at what I was doing. And as I looked at the model more, and if you're familiar with the Toyota Way model, it's two pillars: continuous improvement, respect for people. As I started looking at that more, I started questioning, well, what is respect for people? I kind of thought of it as it's kind of, my individual actions. It's kind of situational. It's kind of how I react to people. It's kind of about my personal behaviors. And, it's in those moments. And as I investigated it more and studied it more, I started to realize that really what respect for people is it's more about an organizational wide um, practice that is really more all encompassing of the systems and the policies and the processes that really enable respect in the culture and in our practices. And it's something that is respect for people is more proactive and it's more intentional. It's really about fostering that consistency across all levels of the organization. It's something that's more fully adopted across the organization, across all the structures, across all the cultural norms, in the daily operations, and it's something that when you're practicing it, it's more not in those moments. It's more deep and lasting. It's about creating more meaningful cultural and operational change really across the organization. And when I started reading, what I could find about it, there's not that much out there about it actually. I realized that most of what I was reading really was hierarchical. It was about what the leader should do, how the leader should show up, the things that the leader should give employees, and that kind of really flew in the face of what I was understanding as I was talking to more and more people at organizations that I felt practiced respect for people. And so I started to then think about, okay, well, if I were to create practices around this, what would that look like? And so for many years, I had lots of ad hoc practices that I had put together that I would use, and then the pandemic gave me the opportunity to kind of pull all of those together into a system. And so now we've got this learning experience that helps people and organizations really bring the practice of respect for people into their organization so that they can more fully realize the benefits of the respect for people piece of lean. And so
Right.
that became the respect for people roadmap. So,
Yeah,
Love it.
I having seen it and worked with you as you were putting it out, Scott. I appreciated and I appreciated two things. One, like you mentioned at the very beginning, respect for people is it's kind of like this. How do I grab it? What do I how do I put my wrap my hands around this? But the roadmap that you created and the practices that you created, the exercises, not just the information, did an amazing job of actually helping it take shape. When I think about respect for people now, I have specific things that I can think about, with those going through that experience. And so I think it's yeah, it's an amazing thing. I think you've done put together some amazing and helpful information and practices for businesses and organizations.
well, one key thing that was important is as we were pulling it together, we realized, well, this is really about creating culture change or creating culture transformation.
Great.
Changes, you can undo a change, but you can't undo when something transforms. You can't go back.
Hmm.
And so we were really thinking through, okay, what are the things that we can do that help create that transformation? And we realized that the way we do culture changes is just not great. You take people off site for a day or two and three, and you give them a whole bunch of information. They maybe remember 5% of it. Then they've got to internalize that information on their own. They've got to then model those behaviors, and then you got to figure out how to cascade that into the organization.
Right.
That's just that just doesn't work. And so we very intentionally wanted to create something that enabled not just the leaders of an organization, but the frontline employees of the organization. So
Hmm.
we're thinking about that like it has to be sophisticated enough for everybody, kind of all of the stakeholders in that chain, to be able to participate in. And we wanted it to be something that they could engage in, but things that they could put into practice. And so we thought very carefully about not just giving them that education component, but how to help them internalize it, and then how to practice those behaviors. And then the next challenge was, well, how do you do that at scale? And so we, right from the outset, we were thinking about how do we do this at scale so that it doesn't rely on Scott Gauvin, so that it doesn't rely
Mhm.
on our company, that it could be something that could be utilized by anybody. And so we designed it and wrote it specifically so that it could scale in that way. So
Hmm.
Scott, did you
Love it.
just coin a phrase? I just want to see if I heard that correctly. Did you just say education?
yeah, that is not my. I did not coin that. That's actually I'm gonna. A friend of mine, Liz, she wrote a book around creating experiential workshops, and they coined that term in their book.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great. I never heard that before. That's a good spin on words. I love it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah,
So let's talk let's talk about respect for people for a minute. So you mentioned, if someone's leading a transformation or they're going through a transformation. So let's imagine that an organization is they're on their lean journey, they're going through a total organizational transformation. Um, why is respect for people a key component to a successful transformation? I mean, like how does respect for people actually contribute?
yeah. Well, so I'll start with Fujio Cho and a quote from him that says, "First we build people, then we build cars."
Oh, yeah.
Really, I think they fundamentally understood that if you want to grow the business, you have to grow your people. And so, in growing your people through respect for people, you're helping them become more engaged, and they're more intrinsically motivated to solve problems, to find things that they can improve on. Uh, it really encourages problem solving at all levels and across levels. Certainly, from the continuous improvement side, if they're engaged collectively, then they're finding ways to reduce waste and improve efficiencies. It really is a fundamental element to helping strengthen teamwork and collaboration. We always talk about, oh, we want to build our team, but what are the mechanisms or the things that we're doing intentionally to help really strengthen teams and teamwork and collaboration? Um, and then, the results that you get is you get better customer satisfaction, you get better employee engagement, better employee satisfaction, and those just tend to lead to longer term sustainable results in general. I mean, I could go on there's lots and lots of benefits that come out of it, but those are some of the few that I would point to.
Yeah. Okay. So aside from the um, road, the respect for people roadmap, what are some strategies that leaders can use to be able to accomplish some of the things you talked about? The empowerment and the building of trust and the team engagement and kind of that collaboration. What are some strategies that you've learned and picked up along the way through all of this? The 10 years you've been working on this and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, so to just kind of tap back into leading with compassion, part of that is leading with transparency and creating kind of that open communication, and really being honest about what are my challenges so that we can then have a better conversation around what are the challenges. If I'm a leader and I can talk about the things that I'm challenged by, it's going to open up the space for you to talk about the things that you're challenged by, and now we can
Right.
collaboratively work together on improving those. Um, Really, fostering kind of a learning culture is kind of a key component as well. And I can't say enough about really active listening. We discredit, I think, sometimes the power of good listening. And a lot of the research and a lot of the studies that I looked at, we're terrible listeners.
Mhm.
We learn very
Sure.
well in formal education, and so the better a listener you can be, it's amazing what you can hear if you're listening for not only the facts, but you're listening for kind of the emotions behind what someone is describing. And when you connect those two things, you start to put together a full
Right.
picture. And so I think Just on top of respect, some of the strategies that I would encourage people, not even just leaders, but everybody, if you can be more transparent, if you can embrace learning, and if you can practice listening, those are three things that no matter what level of the organization you're at, if you can do those three things, you're taking some very positive steps forward.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
What?
Patrick, that makes me. I first came across this idea from your book, in regard to, as Scott talked about, fostering a learning culture and what that
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah.
I'm hearing more and more of that, and think that, wow, there's really something to that. That I don't know why, but it seems like it's almost atypical. It goes against the grain of, the way common business is, where we
Hmm.
don't make mistakes, and we don't need to learn. I'm going to train you, you're going to do it, and you're going to move forward, and that's it.
Yeah.
Don't do the other thing. So, I'm really glad to hear continual validation, as you were talking there, Scott.
Yeah. I think obviously it sounds good to say we want to develop a learning culture, or we want our leaders to support a learning culture. uh, I'd be curious to hear, Scott, like if we unpack that a little bit, or any of the three, what would the tangible, visible actions be by leaders in order to actually support a learning culture? Again, or like you talked about, active listening and the power of active listening. What does that look like? Because I think about, some of the leaders uh, that I've worked with in the past, and they feel like when they go to attend a tier meeting, for example, they feel like they almost need to be there and provide answers or provide direction, or like it's like they're waiting for their opportunity to jump in and say, I'm here and here's what you all need to do, or here's the answer to your problem. But that's not always the case, right? They sometimes, and probably I would even go as far as to say the majority of the time, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be sitting back, listening, and maybe asking questions. But what does it look like if I was to be a fly on the wall watching a leader? What would the actions be that you would see that would turn into that development of a learning culture, or active listening, that type of stuff?
Right.
yeah, and I agree. I don't think that as a leader I'm serving people if I'm giving them all the answers. The learning is
Hmm.
really a struggle. I mean, if you think about anything that you've learned that you've really appreciated the learning around, it was probably some element of struggle. And if we're robbing people of that struggle, we're robbing them of the opportunity to learn. And we know if we want to grow the business, people have to grow, and
Hmm.
we grow through those struggles. And so, there's lots of specific things that we could point to. Certainly, providing training. I think one of the mistakes that I think I see in organizations is that when we do training, we focus on more of the technical training as opposed to the human skill training. And I think one thing that we could probably step more into is providing more of that human skill training. And so, whether it is listening, whether it is just better engage, how do we better engage those human skills? How to get better context around things, how to be more aware of kind of the environment and others around you.
Hmm.
Those human skills really play a huge part in our ability to then collaborate, cooperate, and solve problems. And when we're just technical, we get stuck in this. Well, here's the answer,
Right.
and not realizing, okay, that might be the right answer, but the team isn't there with you. And so not having those skills to kind of have the dialogue so that we can get everybody there, uh, that means that you may never get to that solution. That might be the right solution, but because I don't have some of those other skills to be able to get the team there, we're not going to implement that solution. And so, there's probably many things that we could point to that are beneficial for leaders to do. But one is really stepping into and embracing not just the technical training that people need, but the human skills training, and really and helping people develop more broadly and the more the human skills. So
Yeah, I love it. I think part of that too, that visible action for leaders is to step into that coaching role. If you do have some of those skills, and being able to actually coach some, younger or new leaders in some of that by coming alongside them and observing and having some dialogue, and just helping to develop that next generation of leaders coming up too. I mean, that could be a good active way to kind of spread the knowledge in your organization.
Yeah.
I actually worked with someone once who asked me. They were senior to me, and they said, "Hey, I want to do this co-coaching thing." I said, "Co-coaching? What is co-coaching?" And it was, they're going to coach me if they want me to coach them back. And
Mm.
it's a very strange experience because now I'm telling them about the things that I think they should improve on. But from my perspective, from my experience, and so can't agree more that coaching is a poorly underutilized
Right.
approach in business, and it doesn't have to be just that senior person down to the subordinate. It could be both ways. There's coaching that can happen both ways. So
Yeah, and what I was thinking about, a challenge I was thinking about when it comes to the human skills, and I love how you said that, right? Yeah, the human skills training is, I've been asked in the past, hey, will you mentor these people because we really appreciate the way you do this, this, or this, and they were speaking to some of the human skills that I have, and when I thought about that, I was like, oh, sure, I'll do that. But then going away, thinking about how am I going to help Scott do this, this, and this, I don't know. Like it's not like a technical, where you have your little thing and you have all of these, list of things. The human skills is something that thrive in the coaching relationship,
right.
because in the coaching relationship, you're in it. You're there, and that's when you're able to speak to that. It's not something that, or at least it's not something that I find I'm really talented at teaching in a classroom setting. It's more, hey, come with me
Yeah.
and let's go talk about this. And then let's talk about it afterwards. Let's go do this and let's talk about it afterwards. Or let me give you some advice or, some support. Go and do that, come back and let's talk about it afterwards. It's so much more experiential. And what I see here is, this is, in what we're describing, this is kind of like people first or human centric kind of lean leadership, or leadership in general, but we're, in the context of lean. Is there other things that you've seen that can enhance this? I'm curious, how if someone were to just pick this up, some of our listening audience to hear this and go, yeah, I want to do that. What's a step that they might be able to do immediately, while they're waiting for the book to arrive from Amazon?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, as you know, in the program, one of the things that we encourage people to do is go to those that they work with and ask them the question, hey, what's one thing that I could do or stop doing that would make working with me easier?
That's a
And
can of worms, Scott. I don't
it's
know
a,
if you want to open
Mhm.
puts you in a highly vulnerable position, right? Because you don't know what they're going to come back
it.
with.
Yeah.
But what I have found is that for those who do step into that space, what they get back is really valuable, a really valuable exchange. Not only is it building that relationship, and I think what you were pointing to is these human skills sometimes are developed through the relationship that you have with people. It's not that you can go into a classroom and give them all of these skills. It is in the exchange of how we interact. It's in the exchange of
Right.
how we talk about things.
Yes.
It's in the exchange of how we're solving a problem together. It's in the exchange of when we disagree and how we handle that disagreement and how we sort through that disagreement, that those human skills are really nurtured and developed. And so opening up, if you're a leader and you can open up that can, it doesn't mean that someone's not going to come back and hit you with the whip. You might get one of those, but more often than not, what we find is that people come back with really thoughtful kind of exchanges. And if someone's coming back saying, "Oh no, nothing, you're great," that might tell you something like maybe I haven't created the space yet for them to be honest with me. Because
Interesting. Yeah.
I have some people who come back and say, "Well, I got nothing," and I said, "Well, that's telling you something still."
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So you've talked a lot about the importance of prioritizing people, and when you talk about it, I think it seems you're very intentional about not just saying leaders need to prioritize their employees, but also vice versa, that employees should be looking at their leaders as people as well and prioritizing them as people over the work, right? So it's a both ways kind of thing. And I'm curious if you have any real world examples of maybe organizations you've worked with or that you've worked for where you've seen some real examples of leaders that are prioritizing people, their employees, or vice versa, employees that prioritize leaders as people. And those organizations then, by doing that, are getting the results of a true continuous improvement culture.
Yeah, I had an organization that I was working with, and we were working in some really harsh conditions, and we just were struggling to keep up with the production rates. Um, and one of the recommendations from one of the team members came back like, well, if you gave us a few more breaks, because it's hard to be in those conditions. And the instinct of the leader was like, well, we already don't have enough time. Like, what are you saying? You want more breaks?
Right.
And but he didn't say that. He said, okay, I'm hearing you. Help me understand why you need these additional breaks. And he's like, well, listen, these conditions, it's by the end of the hour, we're really struggling to kind of like keep up. And if we just had another 5 minute break or 10 minute break, and the leader, to his credit, said, okay, well, hey, if we're really going to practice this respect for people thing, and because one of the elements that we teach is around prioritizing well-being.
Hmm.
It sounds like your well-being is being affected here. So, okay, we're going to prioritize well-being. Let's give it a try. Would you know, productivity went way up.
Mm,
But we added breaks. Like that's not something that you would expect, but because we were listening, because we were prioritizing well-being, and because we were trying to collaboratively solve that problem, we gave them more breaks and actually got more output. And so that's an example of where where we're creating that foundation, we're creating that structure, and just by following kind of these tenets, we're like, okay, if this is one of those tenets, let me listen to that and let me engage in that forward. So that would have been that's an example of
great
uh,
example.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Counterintuitive how it it doesn't seem like it would work the way we want it to work, but there's some magic behind the scenes when you're working with people
Mm,
that that really push it forward. So that's an experience that did work. From your experience in working in this field and with this focus, what are some key challenges you've seen leaders face in trying to implement this kind of stuff?
Yeah,
And trying to set this kind of people centric, I guess you could call it, lean culture. Like what are some of the challenges that you've come across or heard, that people have or leaders have?
yeah. I mean, the biggest challenge I think is leaders. I'll call it the leaders' resistance, and it's really that leaders are struggling because there's this thing that they have to get done, right? They've got to hit the numbers, they've got to do the performance, and so supporting people, doing these human skill development and investing that time is almost taking away from their ability to hit those numbers. And so there's sometimes this resistance because honestly, when you're doing some of the respect for people things, you got to have a little bit of faith that it's going to work. That if I invest in people, if I create the right conditions, if I create the right environment, that we are going to get those results. Um, but what I find is that if you're focused on those results, it really inhibits you from kind
Right.
of engaging in the respect for people thing.
Yeah.
And so the part of that is that just that leadership resistance because, well, no, I got to get this done. It's the short term focus. The second thing I would say that is a challenge here is the employee skepticism. If past initiatives failed, or employees may have lack of confidence in leadership's commitment, then trying to move forward, you've got a hurdle that you're right from the outset that you're trying to overcome.
Right.
And especially if you've got siloed departments, or you've got conflict within the organization, it's trying to get the employees to kind of buy in to move forward is also a challenge.
Hmm. Scott, I want to expand on the first one that you mentioned, and because I think it's super key. And I work with a lot of companies where, working with middle management, and they're like, listen, my leadership wants results now. I'm doing my best to think long term and develop the people and really show respect, but I'm being pressed for results right now. And so, one of the strategies that we recommend is, let's, in parallel to some of the long-term stuff that we're working on to develop the right culture that will sustain the results, are doing some project-based improvements, and getting some quick wins, or taking care of some low-hanging fruit right away, in parallel with developing a learning culture and developing your people skills. So that would be one strategy. But do you have any other thoughts on how do you navigate that challenge of, well, I have to have faith that the results will come because I'm doing the right things. I think all three of us would agree that those are the right things and they will show the results. But when you're getting pressure from, maybe it's not just leadership, but from outside external forces, you're getting pressure to show results right now. Any strategies around how to, kind of navigate that and maybe create a little bit of both?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a strategy, but one thing that I see is that a lot of leaders try to go it alone,
Hmm.
as opposed to pulling in people
Yep.
and saying, "Hey, I've got this challenge, and I don't know how to solve this," and pulling people into them and trying to do it more collectively. They try to go it alone. Like, okay, I got to come up with a solution. I got to come up with the answer. I got to come up with the thing to change, and I've got to give everyone the direction. And going it alone is just very, very infrequently does that end in success. You get a greater chance of success if you bring people to you, and you can bring people in, and you can do it collectively. It's really hard to do because as a leader, it requires me to um, be humble, to show my cards and say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. And I know I should have the answer. I don't have the answer, but I want to open this up as a conversation because I think collectively maybe we can come up with an answer.
Hmm.
Um, I see it happen more often than not, and that's the recommendation when I see that happening with a leader. Is I say, hey, bring people in. Don't try to do this alone. Your chances of success precipitously drop if you're trying to go alone. So,
Right. I love
yeah.
that. It's good. Uh, so as we kind of start to wrap up here, Scott, and come to a close, I want to come back to your book, Leading with Compassion, which is available on Amazon. Can you just give us a couple of maybe the points there in the book that you think would be valuable for leaders when it comes to respect for people? I know we've already talked about a few things there, but anything specifically that you would call out from the book that you think are key points?
Well, I will tell you there's 25 stories in there, and there's going to be at least one in there that you're going to be able to relate to, as to how you can maybe show up. Because one of those stories in there is going to be like, oh, that was me. Um, I'll share the story that a bit of the story that I shared in the book, and that was that I came to leading with compassion when I heard a phrase: "All behavior is an expression of an unmet need." And
Mm,
that phrase really kind of opened up a lot of things for me, that all behavior is an expression of an unmet need. And really, when I started thinking about all the interactions I was having, I realized, oh, Well, everyone behaves in ways to meet their own needs. And if I stop judging why people are trying to get their need met and just try to understand what is the need that they're trying to get met, I can more effectively really help them. And so that's what you're going to hear in my story is how I came to that. And I share in the book a couple of stories around how it really changed the situation for me and how it really made, where I could have judged someone and said, well, what the heck is that person doing? To, oh, well, I see the unmet need and, they're not meeting it in the most appropriate way, but I think I can coach them in a way that can maybe help them and help us as an organization as well. And the book is full of stories like that. So I'm sure one of them is going to resonate with people if they go to that.
That's awesome.
Are the stories specific to manufacturing, or will they resonate with anyone in whatever industry they're in?
They're from all different kinds of industries, and so it's not just manufacturing. It's people in healthcare and social work and all kinds of walks of life. So it's a pretty diverse book, but all centered around how we've all come to try to lead more compassionately. And I'll be honest, in just about every story, it's a learning. It's a learning element, right? We're not there yet. And every one of us that wrote these stories, we're all still learning how to do that better. And so part of the way we're learning is by sharing these stories, and learning from each other as well.
Nice. That's great. So, and if anyone has any more questions about the book or Respect for People Roadmap, or they just want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to grab information or connect with you?
So LinkedIn is always a great place to connect with me. ScottGauvin.com. Scott Gauvin. If you go to respectforpeopleroadmap.com, you'll find Respect for People Roadmap. If you go to Macresco, MACRESCO.com, you'll find the consulting site. Those are probably the three best ways to reach out to me.
Awesome.
Excellent. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, it's been great to have you on. I don't know, Shane, I don't want to cut you off. Do you have any last words or motivational?
No, I can't just keep it to last. So let's just wrap it, because I'll just ramble.
Love it. Well, Scott, it's been great to have you on. Appreciate everything that you're doing for the lean community, and that we'll make sure we throw a link to the Respect for People Roadmap website in as well as your LinkedIn and the book Leading with Compassion. So if anyone's interested to make those connections or to learn a little bit more, you can go right to the show notes to grab some more information or connect with Scott. So Scott, thanks again for being on. We so much appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.